So for the call today, oh my gosh, Ashley Harwood, this is so cool. If you don't know who she is, probably after this, you're probably going to go look up on Facebook. She's just kind of a big deal. I don't know, right? So she's done a lot of really incredible things. Being like in real estate as an introvert is something that not a lot of people talk about. And there's a way that you do business a little bit differently that really fits who you are. And that's what we're all about with this. And so Ashley's really done a deep dive. I don't think anybody else, does anybody else have this niche? You have, I don't think so. Look, she's on mute. That's how introverted she is. She's just on mute. She's actually not going to talk the whole time. I'm going to talk for her. No, I'm just kidding. So she's, I mean, pretty big deal. This is just a couple things. She used to be the director of agent growth at Keller Williams. She was recognized as one of the top real estate coaches by the Close and Inman. She's a writer for Housing Wire. She is a creator of Quiet Success. So I'll put a link for that in the chat. And then you're the CEO and founder of Move Over Extroverts, and that's a coaching program, right? So there's, I mean, that's just some of it. So anyways, I'm going to pass it over to you, Ashley. I wanted to give her this whole call so we could really hear from a different perspective. So if I miss anything in your bio, let me know. But I'm going to pass it off to you and just take notes. So
thank you. I came off mute. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me on your call. That's the majority of the bio. I was a solo agent for 6 years, and then I was a coach and trainer full-time for 4 years, 5 years. And I got back into production this past year. So I am currently the lead listing agent for a mega agent team in the Boston area. So hit me up with your Boston referrals. So I'm back in the business, boots on the ground, feeling the pain with everybody, but it's been really, really great to be back working with buyers and sellers. Let's break it up into a couple sections here. So I'll go over kind of 3 different sections, and after each one we can do a pause for questions as people have them. Or if you think of something and you don't want to talk, you can just put it in the chat. My introverts are very familiar with that process, so I love it. So the 3 sections I kind of want to cover are first, managing energy, and that's a really big thing for everyone, not just introverts. Second is managing time. So how does that translate to your calendar? And then the third piece of that puzzle is, what does that mean for how you do business, and specifically lead generation, because that's the biggest challenge that I hear from a lot of agents, not everyone, but primarily that's the biggest hurdle, right? Is how do we have enough leads and enough business? And what are the best strategies? So those are the things that we'll cover in the next, 40 minutes or so. So hopefully that sounds good. And I see Jason's comment in the chat. So this actually takes a lot of energy for me, and I prepared for it by not talking to anyone for like 2 hours prior to right now. And I plan to not talk to anyone for an hour or 2 after this. Like that is what this is a very real example of the energy management piece, because I know that this is very fun and a thing that I love doing, and also it's draining, and that's not a bad thing. Like a lot of times there's this perception that if something is draining or someone is draining, I see this a lot with families, with children and parents, and even business relationships. If another person is draining your energy, that doesn't mean that you don't love them or want them in your life. It's just something to be aware of, to kind of manage it. And I'll give you an example of this. So I was teaching a class a couple years ago in New York, like upstate New York, kind of. And it was a full day class, and we were talking about listing appointment conversion and how that's a very critical piece in every agent's calendar, is your listing and buyer consultations. That's when you are needing to be on and selling yourself to the potential client to get them to trust you and hire you. And there was a gentleman in my classroom who was unknowingly sabotaging all of his appointments. And he was doing this because he would call his mom on the telephone, like in the car on the drive over. He'd call her to catch up, and she would make his energy all wonky without realizing it. Like, she wasn't doing it on purpose. That's just the kind of relationship they had, the kind of dynamic. And he loved his mom. He didn't want to stop talking to her. And I said, call her after. Call her after the appointment. And just it sounds so simple and kind of dumb, but making very intentional small tweaks like that can make a huge difference in your energy level and how you're showing up to those very critical moments in your day, in your business. So that's just one example. So I do have a whole PowerPoint for this stuff. I don't really want to go through it unless you guys really want to see it. I think we can just kind of free flow
If you
it.
don't want to do it, don't do it. That's what we're about. You know what I mean? And also, I just want to say, like you said, and tell me if it's not good if I interject. I'm just like super passionate about this. Because what you said of taking time after before, what a lot of times we can do with ADHD is we can say, man, what's wrong with me? I got to get energy. I got to get motivated. Why do I have to do all this stuff to just get ready? Why can't I talk to people for 2 hours before that? Like, I'm weird, right? And so what I'm hearing you say is, no, know your brain and embrace it, and you will actually function at a way higher level than just shaming yourself and then having even less energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And please do keep interjecting. If anyone wants to interject, just come off mute. This works better as a conversation in this format anyway. So, they just started vacuuming out in the hall. So I apologize if that gets loud.
I can't hear it.
Okay, good. So, all right. So energy management. So for introverts, we get our energy recharged when we're alone. Extroverts in general get their energy recharged around other people. That's the very core, basic definition of the difference between the two. And most people are a combination. So if you think of it like a scale or a spectrum, most people are somewhere in the middle. You kind of lean one way or another. And there are people on the very, very ends of that spectrum, but most people are kind of in the middle. So it's knowing yourself and knowing what you need and being able to kind of monitor it as the day goes on. So my challenge to everyone here is for the next couple days, especially with the holiday coming up and families and travel and stress about cooking, whatever, it can be a lot. So my challenge to you is, from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed, just start to be aware of your energy level. And if it's helpful to think of it like a battery, like your cell phone battery. If you're fully charged up, like you just woke up in the morning, maybe you're fully charged, assuming you had a good night's sleep, which is not always the case. Think of that level as a 10. And then think of, if you're just completely burned out, that's a 0 or a 1. And give yourself a number throughout the day, if it's helpful to put a number to it. Like, oh, okay, I'm at a 5. I'm okay. I'm not, you know. And it's difficult to do this, but try to separate the energy level from emotion, because it's two different things. They are linked and they correlate to each other, but they are separate things, if that makes any sense. And we're talking about more mental energy than physical. Those are also things that are linked, but they're separate, right? So there are things you can do throughout the day to increase your energy level. And an exercise I like to bring people through in my classes is, you can do this right now if you want to jot down a couple things, or do it for homework later. Write down a few things that you know will raise your energy level. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, that doesn't really matter. That's just going to influence what the things are. Like, my boyfriend needs to go to a bar until 2 a.m. and talk to people. And it's like, I need to be home with the cat. Like, those are different recharging activities. but start making a list for yourself of things that you know you feel better after, you feel more energetic after. Could be time with a specific person, could be reading a book, could be a nap, could be time in nature. I hear that one a lot. And have this little cheat sheet, put it in your phone. And if you know you're going to be drained, take one of those things and put it in your calendar.
This could also be when we talk about dopamine, which is like with ADHD, that's sort of lower end. I thought of NCUP, which are the 5 things that create dopamine, which can create energy, which NCUP stands for interesting, new, challenging, urgent, or passion. So if you're thinking, oh, what does give me energy? If it's interesting, if it's new, if it's challenging, if it's urgent, or a passion, that could be a clue too.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the flip side, it can be helpful to make a list of things that you know drain you without judging them. This is simply data collection. What is draining? And then what am I going to do about it? Whether it's rescheduling, now we're kind of shifting gears into time management. See, I couldn't keep them separate. I couldn't do it. Whether it's shifting the timing of those things, if possible. Sometimes you can't always control the day and how things play out, or just delegating some of those things or getting rid of them altogether. So once you have a firm grasp on how your energy ebbs and flows and how to control it, the goal is to stay not at a top 10 energy level at all times. That's not human. That's not realistic. The goal is to just stay somewhere in the middle consistently and try to regulate it as much as possible so you don't have those super highs and those super lows. And there's nothing wrong with the highs. We just can't live there. But the lows, that's where there's the risk of burning out. And that's something I feel very strongly about, is having more conversations around avoiding burnout, because I burned out a lot of times. And I'll share a story with this group. I don't share all the time that I speak, but some occasionally. So the first couple years of being in business, solo agent, I had jumped in full time, and I wasn't closing very many deals my first couple of years. Took a long time to build up my network. I didn't grow up here, so I couldn't just call everyone I knew. But I wasn't busy with deals, but I was busy doing all the lead gen things I was told to do, like cold calling for hours and hours and getting rejections, and I was very stressed out. And I couldn't figure out why I was so stressed out. So I started seeing a therapist, and the therapist gave me the book Quiet by Susan Cain, which is like the definitive book on introversion. I had no idea what it was about or what was going to happen. So I read this book and I was like, oh, crap. Okay, I guess I'm burning myself out without realizing it, because I'm spending all my energy and all my time with other people. And I didn't realize that I needed alone time. And such a simple fix of just baking in enough alone time for myself, that it wasn't instant and it wasn't perfect. It's still not perfect. Nothing is. But that helped me avoid burning out really ever again. So that's where this all started from. And then a couple of years later, my MAPS coach was like, okay, time to build a team. And I said, absolutely not. And so he said, okay, what about keep teaching and coaching? And so that's where this all came from. But yeah, that energy management is the real key there, the real kicker.
Do you have I mean, you're on a team, right? So do you,
I'm on a team, yeah.
oh, okay. And that works for you.
It works well for me. I know that's very unconventional. Usually people start on a team and then go solo and then become a coach. I started solo, I became a coach, and then I realized that all the day-to-day activities of the role I was in. I was also in a leadership staff position with KW. So it wasn't all me running my own company. It was, you know, all the things that come along with being in a staff role. And then I had this opportunity to come on board this team that I've admired for a decade and be their lead listing agent and have admin help and have buyer's agents who work with the buyers. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to take my ego and put it over here and just improve my quality of life. And it's worked well. It's weird to tell people because people judge.
Well, it's kind of being on your own, and sometimes can be put on a pedestal over having a team, which is really it's, I mean, as a coach, it's really kind of interesting. And then there's being on a team is like, oh, and then you know just being a solo agent sometimes is looked down on compared to having this big team. And yet when you look at, like, as a coach, we look at the numbers, right? The profitability, the profit margins. So when you're an individual agent, you're probably going to have about a 50% profit margin, meaning you're going to keep half of the gross commission that you get, right? If you have $100,000 in gross commission for the year, you're going to keep 50,000 of that, or maybe even 40,000, Whereas if you're on a team and you're on a 50-50 split, you don't have any of the liability and you're not managing anybody, and you're making like 50% almost guaranteed, and all of your overhead costs are taken care of, and there's not an ebb and flow. And then when you have a big team, I've coached huge teams and million in GCI, some of them have like a 20% profit margin or 10% profit margin, where they don't even take a salary some months so that other people get paid. So it's not necessarily you can make a lot of money doing it. It's just, it's not all about just having a team and you owning it and having a bunch of people on it. There's so much more behind the scenes. So yeah, Matt's, we got people on expansion teams, so it makes a lot of sense. We have a question that somebody typed. Michelle
Okay.
asked, "What does your typical day and or week look like?"
Good question. So it's changed a lot with every role. Currently in this role, I'm in the office Monday through Friday, in and out, going on appointments, going to networking events. But I typically will start my mornings at a coffee shop that's local. I get there at like, I don't know, 8:30ish, and have a cup of coffee, check my email, which I know you're not supposed to do, but oh well, I do it. It works for me. Um, and then I go to the office for like 9:30 and make sure all my deals are good. And I do my lead gen and lead follow-up either during the day, or I don't have specific times for them because a lot of my lead generation is networking events, chamber of commerce, stuff like that. So I'm not in control of that schedule. So I go through and make sure I have enough events on my calendar to meet enough new people to add to the database. And then I'm also time blocking for my follow-up, make sure I get everyone into the database and keep in touch with them, follow up with any leads. So it's just kind of it's a nice flow. Because I'm on the listing side, I don't work a ton of weekends, which was a huge benefit. So maybe a couple times a month, I'll do an open house or have a private showing for a luxury listing or something like that. But it works well for me. And it's taken a lot of years to figure out what works well, and I do have my alone time. Like, I have to get that in. If I'm at the office all day with other people, I'll go and take a drive or go somewhere else or go to a different office. So we have our mega agent office. That's a separate location. And then we have the KW Market Center. So sometimes if it's just too loud in one of those two, I'll go to the other one. And I say, okay, just need a change of scenery, finish out the day here or finish out the day from home. I'm fortunate that my home is very quiet. It's myself, my boyfriend, and the cat. So I can always find a quiet spot to work if I need to. Hopefully that's helpful.
And I'm hearing too. I'm hearing a ton of you advocating for yourself without apologizing. It's like you learn how your brain works. And tell me if I'm interjecting too much. I mean, like you said,
Not at all.
Okay. I'm like fangirling over you a little bit because what I love so much about you is you haven't changed yourself to hit the level of success you're at, and you don't hide stuff or try to come off a certain way. Like you've done huge things, and then like you said, you're an agent on a team, right? And you share that in the first like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So I think it's really powerful example of, I mean, you're not like, you know how you see on screen, or we have, it's like coming across like really big and loud and having this big presence to come across in the video. You're like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna sit by this cool plant next to me, and I'm gonna be my calm and collected and a little bit, somewhat reserved, not like blah out there. You know what I mean? And you're just gonna be yourself, which I would assume allows us to actually be sustainable. Uh, and then if you weren't this way, you wouldn't be as successful. If you were trying to be something else, what would happen if you didn't accommodate for yourself and advocate for yourself? What do you think your life would look like today if you didn't own your stuff without apology?
I would be burned out. I would probably be out of real estate. It wouldn't work. Like there's a limit to how much we can pretend to be something we're not, whatever that means to you. And I remember I was speaking at this conference a couple years ago, and if you guys know Keith Krikorian, he's the team leader in Chestnut Hill in Massachusetts. He's also my boyfriend. So he came with me to this and watched me speak. And it was the first time he had watched me talk to a group of people. And he said afterwards, he was like, babe, you did great. But you are very just calm, and you need to fire up the people and get them energized. And you were just too reserved and too calm. And I look at him like, every other speaker in this entire convention center, we're in Atlantic City, every other speaker here is doing that. That's not what they need from me. The people come to my session because they need to be listened to and heard and just be told that it's okay to do business differently. And there are clients who are going to crave that.
It can be overstimulating. I can imagine going to that conference and you feel, I mean, I've heard this from coaching clients too. When somebody's not being authentic or forcing something, you feel it. Some people are naturally up like that, and some people push themselves. And for me, I can only be exposed to it for a little bit before it starts to dysregulate my system. Like I'm very sensitive. So if somebody's pushing themselves and kind of forcing themselves, I'm either going to think, man, what's wrong with me? I got to do this more. That's what it takes. Or I'm going to kind of feed off that like dysregulation. I don't know if that makes sense. So I could see coming into your training at that conference and just, and just being able to relax, and maybe I don't want rah for a little bit.
Right. That's always the goal. And no matter where you fall on the introvert extrovert scale, it's all about authenticity, finding what works for you. That's an excellent segue to lead gen, which is the third piece that I promised we would talk about today. And there's no magic bullet. There are hundreds and hundreds of ways to go and meet people and find business. The way that is best aligned for you is whatever feels most natural. And there will still be times when it doesn't feel good. There will be times when it feels slightly uncomfortable. But it shouldn't feel uncomfortable all the time, every second of the activity forever. So my lead gen has taken a lot of different twists and turns. It started out with for sale by owners and expireds because I was a brand new agent, and I went to Bold and they said, here's a list, call them and say this. And I did. And it was fine, but it was not aligned for me. And at the same time I was doing this, see, here's where A/B testing comes into play. The same time that I was making those calls in the morning, I was joining networking events in the afternoons and evenings. And then I was able to really see in real time the results that I was having were from the in-person events, because I'm just better in person. Like I'm okay on Zoom, but if we ever meet in person, come say hi, because I'm more natural, more comfortable in person.
I think you're great on Zoom. I just want to throw that out there. So you must be extra great in person because,
I don't know.
yeah.
But so that's what was working for me. So I was able to see, well, the results I'm getting, the people who are referring me business, or the people who maybe they don't have business to refer right now, but I'm their favorite real estate agent, even though we just met at the last event. And that told me something about what I needed to really focus on. So it took a good year, maybe more, for me to finally give myself permission to let go of that expired piece, because I felt a lot of guilt around it, because this is what we're supposed to be doing. Like, it's gotten better. This was 11 years ago. So it's gotten a lot better. But back in the day, that was like, if you're not doing this, you're going to fail for sure. And it's just not true. So I will always encourage people to find ways to meet people somehow that's organic to you, like hobbies or things you're already doing. If you have kids, that's like the best way to meet people, because you have all those other parents and you can just tap into that. And maybe it's something else. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's mailers, going all in. Do you guys know Janine Sasso? She's with Coldwell Banker. She teaches classes on doing mailers, and she does all her business from just like farming her neighborhood. It's crazy. So there's so many different things that do work. But the problem with choosing something that's not aligned is it's not sustainable. That's the important thing. It's not that you can't do it, it's that it's going to be so much harder. Like, why make it harder than it needs to be? That's the bottom line, I think.
You said something, lead gen might be a little bit uncomfortable, but it doesn't need to be uncomfortable all the time. So there's a saying out there that says, all growth begins outside your comfort zone. And I have a problem with that statement because, one, it's like an all or nothing statement. And especially with ADHD and neurodivergence, we have a tendency to go more literal and more black and white, like all or nothing. So if you're like me, when I hear all growth begins outside your comfort zone, it means, well, if I'm going to grow, I have to be uncomfortable all the time. So if this thing's hard, that means I'm growing. Instead of, let me figure out what's in my lane and get mastery at it where it doesn't feel like work, and I'm gonna get a 10 times return on it. And so your lead gen shouldn't feel like a grind every day. If it feels like a grind, if it feels super hard, if you're uncomfortable, if you're, again, it's really hard to do good work when you're completely dysregulated. So if you're doing a type of lead generation that makes you have a ton of anxiety, or you're so tired after, or you dread it the night before, that is not the right type of lead generation for you. I don't care who tells you to do that. And I love that you're reiterating this, because that saying, all growth begins outside your comfort zone. Get comfortable first and see how much you can do within your comfort zone, and then expand after you have done everything you can within your comfort zone. When you've done everything, you've maxed out the activities that are comfortable, then throw some other stuff in. But don't throw yourself into this hell of discomfort and grinding like I did, because it sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. I've been there. It's not fun. It's not healthy either. It's not good for the body to be that anxious and uncomfortable all the time. Like, I think 5 minutes max. 5 minutes of being outside your comfort zone, and then go back into it. I have a whole chapter in my book on this, actually, because I think it's really important to, yes, you have to do some uncomfortable things sometimes. Like, I really don't feel like texting this person or going to this event. You know what? I already paid for it, so I guess I'll go. I'll stay for an hour and then I'm bailing. Something like that. Like, it's okay to half-ass things a little bit.
This
Right?
is, yeah, go for good enough. We talk about it all the time. Go for 80%. Don't go for 100. So many of us go for 100 and try to make it perfect, and then we just burn ourselves out. We're not good for anybody.
We do, and it's really counterproductive. Like, I'm all for doing your best. Take care of your clients, do a great job, but at the same time, realize that we're humans and nothing's ever going to be perfect. So just good enough, as long as you're well intentioned, you're not screwing up stuff on purpose, you know, probably gonna get in trouble for saying that, but whatever. Like it just is what it is.
Oh,
Like half-ass it. If that's the best you can do, then that's great.
there's no, I mean, I think it's just this stuff doesn't get talked about a lot, right? And you and I have been in spaces, and you got to pick and choose. That's what it is. It's not like you're half-assing life and you're like giving up. What you're doing is you're prioritizing what matters and the stuff that you have to show up at, but it's not as important to be 100%. You're letting it, right? If you let's say your office is having a party or something that sounds draining to you, but you want to make an appearance, you don't have to go and show up and be the best and talk to everybody. And it's okay to show up, talk to a couple people, have an intention for being there, and leave a little bit early and let that, because that's how I'm taking it, right? That means like half-assing it. You don't have to be 100% all the time. There's another saying, and tell me what you think, Ashley. This, how you show up in here is how you show up everywhere. Sometimes that's true, and sometimes it's not, because you might be somewhere where you're dysregulated, or you have to mask your symptoms, or you can't get up and move, or you just had something happen, or you had bad dreams or something, and it's in maybe you just being there is a win. And if you don't show up 100%, doesn't mean that's what it's going to look like every. Again, that's an all or nothing statement, right? How you show up here is how you'll show up everywhere. No, there's a lot more variables. So we can just shame ourselves for not being, crushing it in every arena. But then we're tired and we can't prioritize the stuff where we do want to show up as 100%.
I agree. I don't like the all or nothing statements.
Yeah.
I really don't. I have an example. Today, I was with my team. We were working on a newsletter. It was going to go out to just our agent referral partners. It wasn't even going to clients. It was going to you guys. And three of us, there's 7 of us on the team, 3 of us were talking about the colors in this newsletter. And our brand colors are white and baby blue. Very pretty, not super Thanksgiving-y. So I suggested, well, let me tool around with it, make it like browns and oranges, whatever. The amount of time that the 3 of us spent going back and forth, I'm like, you guys, it does not matter. It literally doesn't matter what the colors are. Like we can go to all white. I don't care. I just want to get the thing sent out. This is one of those things that does not, I said, let's put a timer on this and we can figure this out. We have 2 minutes to figure this out and then we're done. Because I can't, this is not a good use of time to figure out these colors, And they might think I'm half-assing it, but it's not that important.
Well, well, yeah, again, it's prioritizing. So when you look at stocks, this is an analogy from the beginning of my career. Because I mean, we've crossed some, we've had paths crossed, but I mean, some people know, right? I was co-running a team in the top 100 in the world. We had at least one closing every day, Monday through Friday, for the entire year. And the analogy was like, if you think of the stock market, right, and there's all these stocks, and your time is the money you would put into these stocks. The better you are at choosing the stocks that return, the better return you're going to get on your money or your time, right? So if you have a stock and you put a bunch of time into it, but it's got a one times, or I guess a 0.01% return, versus you reserving that time and money and putting in another stock that has a 50% return, you're going to do a lot better. And that's kind of, I think, what I'm hearing you talk about is you're picking and choosing where to put your time and effort and your energy, so then you can dump all of that into the stock that's going to return, versus this one that you're supposed to do because everybody says you're going to do it, but it really doesn't matter as much. That's how I'm.
I love that analogy. That's exactly what we're talking about. And the only thing I'll add to it is it's important to save a percentage of that time and energy for yourself. And another chunk for your family, however you define that. But those 2 chunks have to be there too.
And that's a good point. So maybe the stocks could be your family, it could be your personal time, it could be your health, it could be your fitness, it could also be your business. It could also be, a client that maybe you won't have this huge return, but they were a veteran and this is their first house that they're going to get, that they're going to retire in, and it means a lot. And I mean, I've had that. I was doing, $1 million houses, and then this guy with $15,000 with PTSD was looking for a trailer. I lost money on that, but that was one of my favorite deals I've ever done, because of the return of not monetary, just the energy and the connection and just seeing somebody that deserved it. So the return doesn't always mean money either. It could just be like fulfilling you.
Mm, absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess I'll start wrapping up the main points here. Monitor your energy, figure out what makes it drain, what makes it recharge. Use that data in how you structure your calendar and make sure that when you need the highest level of energy and your very best self, like for your appointments and your other key things in your life and your business, make sure that you're structuring your day in order to get that. And maybe it means you have a listing appointment and you don't have anything before it. And that way you can take your day and make sure that you are getting what you need beforehand. And then look through your lead gen activities. If there's anything on there that gives you anxiety, like that's a good thing to either have somebody else do, or maybe it doesn't need to be done at all. If it's not working, definitely don't do it. If it's working, then it might be a good thing to delegate to somebody else who's not necessarily better than you at that activity, but just enjoys it more. So it's easier for them. And then replace it with something that you are good at and like, and it's fun and it's in flow. That's the biggest thing, is the alignment. The alignment. And it will also like help you attract the right clients. I think about not just networking events, but social events and hobbies and any sort of athletic stuff, or any place where you can be around other people. If it's natural for you to be there anyway, then it's going to feel better for you and for the people you're talking to. If you put me in a brewery or a golf course or anything like that, like everyone's gonna be like, what are you doing here? But if you put me in a yoga studio or a bookstore or like a martini bar, then it just feels right for everybody.
What do you do? Let's say your battery's drained and then you have to go do something. You have like you're totally drained. You're like, I gotta stop. Like I'm empty. And then it's, oh man, our team, we have to do this 2 hour thing that's gonna take a bunch of energy. What do you do?
Yeah. I go in the car by myself. I either drive, or if I can find a quiet place to park, I'll park, and just no music, no sound, deep, like deep breaths, eyes closed, deep breaths. And that's my secret weapon. Like I can pull that out anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the car. A lot of times I do that in like at conferences, I'll do that in the ladies' room, or I'll go find a quiet hallway or a room that nobody's in and just like breathe. And that always helps. And it's flexible because you can do it for 60 seconds or 5 minutes or however much time you have. It's not perfect, but that's my go-to thing. If I have more time, I'll, go for a walk or try to take a nap, but it just depends on the logistics and the lead time. I did end up working a lot this weekend. We had a new listing launch, and it's a high-end luxury 2.65 million for this townhouse. And so I was there for the open house, and then we had a showing I needed to cover for that as well. That was Saturday. Sunday, we had our client appreciation event. We had about 100 people there. Everyone got their pies, everyone brought their kids, someone brought a dog. It was chaos. And I was so drained after those 2 days. And I knew I would be, though, because I had those on the calendar. So I knew, okay, I'm not getting my days off that I normally do this weekend. So yesterday I did work, but I kind of, chilled out. Today I'm working, but I'm in my jeans, I'm more chill. And then tomorrow's going to be definitely like a half day kind of work from home situation. And thankfully we have the holiday. So it was easier to do that longer stretch of intensity, knowing that there would be a break after. That's another good suggestion, is scheduling your breaks, your days off, your vacations. Make sure that that's all in the calendar so that when things do get nutty, you know you're going to get a break.
How many, like, what's your vacation and time off schedule look like for the year typically?
I take 2 weeks off per year.
In consecutive order or separately?
Usually separately, like 1 week here, 1 week there. It's somewhat flexible, but it also helps that most of the time I'm not working every weekend, so that kind of balances things out. I know for most solo agents, it's like it's hard to even take one day off a week. I remember those days. So if you're a solo agent and you're listening, start with one day. I see Blanca's raising her hand. Yes, start with one day off a week if you can. The best way to do this is to find a buddy in the office to cover for you, cover for each other. That's the easiest way to do it. You don't have to hire anybody.
And there's the also the 2 half days. So if you can't do a whole day, you just can't make yourself, the next best alternative would be 2 half days. So you might take, starting Saturday at 3 p.m., you might take off through Sunday at 3 p.m. So at least you're getting 24 hours. And if you have clients that, I mean, and you can do it preemptively, have a conversation with them, you can be done at 3 and then start back at 3 on Sunday. If you can't do that, reach out to me, because then you might want some more help, like on how to set boundaries and expectations. So there's no reason that you couldn't take that off. There's really not, planning ahead.
Exactly. Boundaries, expectations. And it's part of that is confidence too.
Yeah. So if I can ask, like it, and tell me if I can't, right? Ashley,
Sure.
because I want, like, full transparency, right? So at the beginning of the call, out of 10, like, where would you say your energy level was like before you started with us?
Oh, I know where you're going with this. No one's ever asked me this before. Um, I would say my energy was probably about an 8, maybe a 7. I've been in the office all day today, so like, but the past couple hours I've been by myself, which is helpful.
Mhm.
So I would say like 7 or 8.
7, right? And then you said, I'm going with this. So what's going to be my next question?
What's my energy level right now?
Uh-huh. And it's not, I'm not offended, right, if it's
No, I
low.
know.
Like, I want people to see it's okay to, like,
This is an important question. I'm actually really glad you're asking me this. I'm gonna say we're probably like down to a 3.5, 4. Yeah, I'm feeling it.
okay.
It's good though. It's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's
It's just
I
how it
think,
is.
well, exactly. That's why I think it's really helpful for people to see. So when you are out as an agent, you're doing something, and I mean, Ashley's like done all kinds of stuff, coach, speaker, trainer. This is normal. It's not like we're this crew that drains your energy. This is normal. So if you do something like this, and let's just, oh, it's just an hour, why? No, this is normal, and having the self awareness. So instead of, after this, you're probably not going to go force yourself to go do something and beat yourself up if you can't. You're
Oh,
probably gonna, I'd assume, do something to get your energy back, right? And get some alone time.
I am. I'm gonna get in the car. I'm gonna go get a bottle of champagne because my boyfriend just finished his book. He just finalized his cover art today. So I'm gonna get him some champagne and go home and pet the cat
That's
and
great.
just chill out. But yes, this is why most of my classes at this point are an hour.
Mhm.
I've taught the full day class before. People need to pay me a lot of money to teach a full day class at this point because it is,
You do this for free. That's a big
yeah.
deal. At what point? So you said you're like a 3.5 now, right now.
Yeah.
So at what point would you kind of shut down and withdraw in any arena? What number out of 10? When do you stop? Because I know for me, if I don't stop soon enough, it's like it's almost a point of no return. And I might need a day or two. I call them a throwaway day, where it's just like, ah, and like if I push myself too far. Is there a certain out of 10 where you kind of call it before you have nothing left?
Mm. Yeah, when I get to about a 2, 2.5,
Mhm.
that's when I don't necessarily need to, well, I don't know if I would say I would call it, but that's when I say, okay, I need to do something. Yeah, maybe that is what I would say I would call it. I need to do something to raise it back up. I need to plug in my phone. I need to plug in my energy battery, plug myself into the wall.
Mhm. So for someone right now that is burned out, right? They have not been conserving their energy. They've just been running on empty for a long time. They are burned out. If they came to you and asked, like, how do I get my energy back? What advice would you give them?
First, I would ask if there's anything that they know will recharge them, because it's very individual and personal. And some people are aware of that, some are not. So if they know what those things are already, then I would say, okay, clear your calendar for the next at least half a day and go do those things. And just if they don't know what they are, I would still say take some time and just try to shut your brain off for a little while and reset. Physical activity is always good, even just a walk. Naps are good. These kind of universal recharging things. Or if you're an extrovert, which there are lots of extroverts around, maybe even on this call, maybe you need to go have lunch with a friend or do something that's more social and interact with other people to recharge your batteries. But do whatever it takes. Like you got to stop the bleeding at some point and just go and take what you need. Don't worry about the business. If you need to tag in somebody else that you trust in the office to watch the business, like that'll be fine. Like you're the priority.
That's great advice. Okay. And I have a last question. So anybody else raise your hand. And um, so thinking of being an introvert, right? You're doing all this stuff to kind of regulate your energy, to kind of, why is being an introvert actually an advantage? Like, why is it making you successful? Because some people might think, oh, you can't have as much time, you can't do as many Zoom calls, you can't network as much. What's the hidden superpower with how you're wired?
It's really that we have a very rich inner life. So there's a lot of critical thinking, processing that happens on the inside that people don't see. We tend to be really good listeners and go deep with people in our relationships, and that makes for really great real estate agents because we go deeper with our clients in general. These are very gross generalizations, you guys. Don't get mad at me, but that's an introvert superpower is listening, relationship building, and quality over quantity, if that makes sense. Because we don't have a lot of energy to spread around. I can't have 1,000 best friends. I have one best friend. That's it. I have a lot of acquaintancy friends. I have a lot of people that I enjoy talking to sometimes. I can't do the small talk. That's exhausting for me and for a lot of introverts. It's not. So that's a very draining activity for me. Um, so you find that a lot at conferences and oh my God, holiday parties. How are you? Good. How are you? Good. Great. I can't.
Yep.
So if you feel the same way, that's okay. That's normal.
So somebody wrote, you have a book out, right? And what is the and I'll post your Facebook group, which is a really great group. I'm gonna post that in the
You.
chat again. But what's the book that you mentioned?
Thank you. The book is not out yet, but it will be in the spring. Hopefully February or March. It's going to be about this whole topic, how to build a business as an introvert, a real estate business specifically. So it's very niche. HarperCollins said, you're way too small. No, go away. But I found a small publisher. Hopefully that'll be helpful to people. And if you guys want to help me write a review or buy a copy or something, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to support you. So let me know, especially with how much you've given us this hour. So let me know when it's ready, and I'll spread it around. We have a question from Susan. She said, it's difficult to let yourself relax when your lead generation isn't bringing the success it usually does. How do you slow down and enjoy that time without stressing you should be trying to get business?
It's really hard to do. I will acknowledge that. It's really, really hard to do. And it's less about relaxing and feeling good because that's not always possible when the business isn't there because that stress is real. There's no getting away from that. The trick is giving yourself time to recharge is actually going to make you more productive because it will give you clarity. It'll give you time to take a step back and reassess what you're doing and maybe find some things that you could tweak to make your lead gen efforts more effective. That's how I look at it. It's less about, in that state, it's less about relaxing and, oh, I'm going to go and feel great on my day off. It's more like, I need a break or I'm going to lose my mind or I'm just not going to be efficient in any of my activities because my system isn't working the way it's supposed to be working. So it's more of a reset versus relaxing, if that makes sense.
And
It's a
that's
business tool.
and for us too, especially with ADHD, right? We have 10 times the amount of thoughts as someone without ADHD. We have this internal motor that doesn't stop. So I can do a call on how to relax and rest because it's different for us. If you tell me to, just sit down and read a book when I'm in that space, I'm actually might feel worse after. Or like meditation, if I'm not in a space to do that, I might feel worse after because my thoughts go crazy because my brain's understimulated. So then what happens is the brain will release all kinds of thoughts and sometimes ones that are stressful because it produces cortisol, which produces dopamine. So it actually is trying to regulate itself. And so if you're having trouble relaxing or resting, your rest and your relaxation is going to be different than someone without ADHD. You're not going to just go, sit somewhere next to a candle and read a book. You might need to be doing something that's a pattern interrupt or different than where your brain was locked on. So, like Ashley, it could be a hobby, it could be like a TV show, a movie, it could be walking, it could be something like physical that's really engaging, something that's going to consume. I mean, it could even be cleaning your house, just something different than where your brain's not running the same program over and over and over again in the same way. Something different can actually be rest. So your rest could look more active than someone else, is an option too. Are you at a 2 yet, Ashley?
No, not yet. I'm good.
We're gonna leave you some left for your cat and your boyfriend.
Thank you. That's a really good point, though. And that's why I hesitate to give specific examples, but I know that those are helpful because everyone's so different. So it's whatever is going to help your system reset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This was great. Thank you so much for being here. So I dropped your Facebook group in the chat, and if anybody has any other questions, you mind if they reach out to you, or because I know you've got programs.
No, please do. Please do. I would love to keep in touch with everyone and thank you for inviting me on the call today.
We'll see you next Tuesday, everybody.